morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's important panel on prostate cancer awareness. I am Roxanne Lerma, Director of Communications and Media for this great city. We're so honored to have a distinguished group of panelists who bring not only professional expertise, but also some personal experience to this very important conversation. First, we have Edinburgh Mayor Ramiro Garza Jr., whose courage has inspired today's gathering. It was only in January that Mayor announced he would not be seeking re-election after being diagnosed with prostate cancer. And since then, I think we've all seen that he's become a very passionate advocate for awareness, urging men in our RGV to really take charge of their health, which is what we're doing today. We also have, thank you, appreciate it. We also have Dr. Phillip Kim, a highly respected urologist specializing in minimally invasive and robotic surgeries with training from UC Davis and Harvard's Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Dr. Phil, as he likes to be called, is deeply committed to providing compassionate, personalized care to our patients in the Valley. So round of applause for him as well, please.
Thank you so much.
We are also joined by Mrs. Myra García, a leader in economic development on both the U.S. and Mexico border, and a realtor with expertise in commercial, industrial, and residential properties. And she also knows this issue personally as the wife of former Edinburgh Mayor Richard García, who is also a prostate cancer survivor. So beyond all of her amazing professional achievements, she's bringing the unique perspective of a wife, a caregiver, and of course, a family advocate. So round of applause for Mrs. Garcia, please. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Henry Rhize, whose remarkable journey began in the Dominican Republic and led him to become a board-certified expert in urology and reconstructive surgery. A U.S. Army veteran with over a decade of service. Thank you for that. Dr. Ruiz now serves as chairman of the Department of Urology and Residency Program at DHR Health, as well as clinical professor of surgery and urology at the University of Houston. Dr. Rhize, thank you so much. It's quite a panel that we have assembled this morning, and I think we're gonna start today with Mayor Garza. Mayor, I'm sure it was a complete shock when you were diagnosed, and I think we've heard about it in the media that you said no symptoms. So can you tell us about how you were actually diagnosed? How did that come about?
Sure, good morning, and thank you, Roxanne, and thank you all of you for being here. This is a wonderful event that I hope that it continues in years to come to just spread awareness. This month is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. But so for me, I've been very vocal about this. It was just a routine blood check. You know, hopefully all of you go to your yearly checkup. I always go during my birthday. So people ask me, well, when do you go? And I say, I always went around the June time, and that's when I went for my routine annual, physical. And so they did some blood work, and my PSA was elevated. So my primary doctor just asked that, referred me to a urologist to inspect that further. And so, of course, after a series of tests, that led to the diagnosis. And so, I felt perfectly fine. I think when I announced that I wasn't running for re-election, I think I made the comment there that I think I could have run a 10K that day. That's how I felt. And I only I only say that jokingly because, obviously you feel just fine. So if you're sitting here thinking, I don't, think I have anything with prostate, you don't know that unless, you make the appointment and you go get checked. And I think that's the key to all this.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Garcia, we were actually talking before the panel kicked off, and I didn't know this. It's something I just found out. It wasn't once, it's actually been twice for our former mayor, Garcia. So tell me about that and kind of the role that you played in the treatment and recovery process as he's going through this once and then 10 years later again.
Right. So my husband was diagnosed with prostate cancer. His was a little advanced. It was a stage 3. And he had a prostatectomy, the complete removal of the prostate 10 years ago, and had been doing very, very well. As Mayor Garza mentioned, my husband's in the initial diagnosis was also symptom-free, very active. You see him today, and he's still handsome, energetic, and never read a bunny. He just, it is silent. It is silent. So 10 years later, they're again being very, feeling healthy. But during your regular checkups, continue to request the PSA. It had not been done for about a year, and the PSA was elevated. You should not have a reading after a prostatectomy. And so we just finished 37 rounds of radiation, and he's doing fantastic. It's fantastic. He's doing great.
I'm so glad to hear that. So, Dr. Ruiz, we have 2 examples right here. Mayor Garza, Mayor Garcia, no symptoms. So I think is that kind of why it's so important for men to get screened, and when should they start doing this?
So, very important, because it is the prostate cancer in this country is the most common type of solid tumor cancer in this country. And it's approximately over 370,000 cases a year that are diagnosed. About 35,000 people died of prostate cancer every year. Now, unfortunately, in people like us, Latins and Blacks, it tends to be diagnosed at a much more advanced stage than the rest of the population. And as Latins, we tend to be the so-called very macho men that refuse a digital rectal exam and to be checked because I'm okay. Well, unfortunately, those are you're playing Russian roulette with your life. So it's a very routine test. Prostate cancer is curable if found localized. It's incurable if it's not. You can prolong your life prolonged probably about an average of 2 years, but then you die. So a not so comfortable exam and a PSA and then a routine evaluation after that can save your life. It can be done part of your routine exam every year, and then your physician will refer to one of us. So yes, very important, especially remember, it tends to be diagnosed at a more advanced stage than us. The thought is for that is that we that don't have access to care in the Valley, you have a lot of access here with the HR Dr. Ken here, and others. So you can save your own life by doing that. And just remember, the most common cancer in this country.
Thank you, Dr. Rhize. So, Dr. Phil, for people that don't know, how does perhaps family history or a man's lifestyle impact their risk of developing prostate cancer?
Right. So I do want to echo Dr. Ruiz's, words that prostate cancer is the most common cancer diagnosed in men. Okay. So to make the numbers a little simpler, that comes out to about 1 in 8 people diagnosed with cancer.
Wow, 1 in 8.
1 in men. So that's quite prevalent. And in terms of risk factors, there are certain risk factors that we know now that puts one person at a higher risk of getting cancer than someone else. So those are things like African American descent, just as Dr. Ruiz mentioned, strong family history of prostate cancer, like in the first-degree relative, and also certain genetic mutations, right? So when I see patients in clinic and try to screen them, for potentially having prostate cancer, I do ask them about their mother's history as well, not just their father's.
Okay.
So if mother has a breast cancer, and there's a strong history of breast cancer, maybe in the sister aunt, then I asked them, have you ever had your DNAs checked for potentially having certain mutations like the BRCA2 gene, which is known to be a strong gene that's associated with breast cancer. And now we know that certain genes like the BRCA gene can put you at a higher risk of getting prostate cancer as well. So, so to kind of summarize, strong family history, certain ethnicities, and also having certain DNA mutations can put you at a higher risk of getting prostate cancer.
Okay, so know your risks, definitely.
And to follow up on him, I have a family here from Edinburgh the father was diagnosed at 53 with prostate cancer. And he had 3 sons and a daughter. The daughter is a family practice physician. And doing her research, she said, hey, you guys need to be checked. Well, the oldest sons were diagnosed with prostate cancer in the mid to late 40s.
Wow.
The third son, who came to see me, normal PSA, normal exam, and I said, but with your history, you probably have prostate cancer already. And I checked with some of my colleagues. I did a biopsy in him, and he had what we call clinically significant prostate cancer. He was 38 years old. So in those with a family history and with the genetics, and he tends to be very aggressive, detected at that early age, but it can be very impactful for you if you have a family history. It's all of the more reason to be checked, and that starts at around age 40.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Mayor, it had to have come as a total shock because no symptoms, routine, it's your birthday, you go get your physical done. So speaking on a super personal level, how do you handle something like that, being told you have prostate cancer? How do you deal with something like that?
Well, obviously, we think of our family, right? First and foremost, trying to figure out, what's important to you. It's almost a total heart stop and trying to assess, everything because our health is everything, right? So without our health, what do we have, right? And serving as an elected official, I thought it was important that, I was very open about it. Everybody deserves to know, if there's something wrong with the elected official, with a medical condition, you need to know. And for me, I didn't know where that path was going to go. I didn't know, am I going to have to miss council meetings? Am I going to miss to do that? And so I wanted to get that out of the equation, and that's why I actually announced not to seek re-election. Not because I don't want to continue serving. I just wanted to focus 100%, on my family and the treatment options that are available. I mean, there's, for me, I was very fortunate that I was diagnosed with the early stage. And it was early, detected it very early. And so what does that mean? That means that you have more options, what, your treatments could be. And so I had, some time to assess that. Ultimately, I decided to have the surgery as well as our former mayor, prostatectomy, removal of my prostate. I felt that was the best course of action. But, I completely changed my lifestyle. I started doing intermittent fasting. And it's different for everybody. All our bodies are different. I learned so much from men that called me that had been through this same process, men that were going through it, trying to understand, do they have the same thing or not? Of course, each of them that would call me about that, I'd say, go see your doctor. I can only tell you so much, for at least from my standpoint, but go to the doctor. I mean, it's interesting as men, I think, as Dr. Rhize is pointing out, we try to, I guess it's in our nature to try to justify everything, right? Well, it's just that my cholesterol is, high. That's why my PSA is high. No, it has no correlation at all. Sorry. At least I'm not a medical doctor, but, we try to justify it. And I've talked to so many, men out there, and at the end, I just tell them, go see your doctor. Go see your doctor, make your appointment, and, that's the only way we could know what is really happening.
Okay. Mrs. Garcia, what, as a caregiver, have you learned that maybe you wish that you knew at the beginning? What have you learned on this journey?
So much. Cancer is a very big word. ask questions, understand it, because the biggest fear for me was the unknown. The biggest hurdle for me was, what are we dealing with? What are the options? What is life like post-cancer? And have the conversations with your doctor team, because you're not going to have these questions.
Right.
And to the extent that you can understand it, that you can figure out what your next steps are, is how you're able to just kind of accept it and deal with it and get past it and get through it. And that's exactly what we've done. It's just understanding everyone. Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. I probably drive my husband's medical team crazy because I do. I ask 1,000 questions.
And that's okay.
I do, because he's my husband, and I want to know. And so don't be afraid to ask and ask again if you don't understand the answer.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ruiz, what treatment options are available for men if they're diagnosed, and kind of how have you seen that improve over the years?
To follow up on yours first, is that we actually like questions. There's nothing better than a
Ask 'em.
well-informed patient that has all their questions answered. We can only help you make a decision by answering your questions and alleviating your concerns. So questions are good. And if you find a doctor who gets annoyed with your questions, find another doctor, for sure.
And I like that.
So seriously, because that means that he's not there for the right reasons. The right reasons are to help you as much as we can. And if they're not willing to listen to you, then find somebody else. Treatment options. So it all depends on stage, how early and how late it's found. Over the last, let's say, 15 years, the most impactful and dramatic change in the treatment of prostate cancer is probably the robotic radical prostatectomy that our mayor had. In the past, when I trained in the 1990s, you're young, so you probably have never done an open prostatectomy. I did in my chief residency, it was like 125 open radical prostatectomies. And we did a lot of guessing. And he would say, I'm a reconstructive urologist, and I hate anything that is taking out things. I put things together. I like to fix things. So since that period of time, the Da Vinci robot has made this surgery so incredibly precise. You see, what we used to guess open were the nerves that control erection and so on. We guess at that. Sometimes we saw it, but the majority of the time we didn't. With a Da Vinci robot, you can see it at least in 10 times in HD, precisely where they are. So the surgery is very precise. It's essentially bloodless. Rarely do they require any transfusion. In the past, we used to keep a catheter over 10 days, anywhere between 3 to 7 days in the hospital. Now it's like an overnight stay. The catheter is anywhere between 4
Wow.
and 7 days, depending on the practice. And the results are essentially better, if not same or better, but they'll go back to normal activities, dramatically improved. Now, also the other treatment option with curative intent is radiation therapy that can be delivered in a number of ways. Seeds, external beams, called IMRT. It's short for a very complicated terminology. And in the past, when I trained, essentially the technology was such they pointed the radiation beam in the general direction of prostate, so it affected the bladder, rectum, and so on. These days, it's incredibly precise, so it tends to just be directed at the prostate. Most of the time, it spares the bladder, the rectum. So in the right stage, it's an excellent choice too, is if the patient, especially medically, cannot tolerate a radical prostatectomy operation. There are other modalities, cryotherapy, ultrasound, and so on, that proton therapy that also are in the market, but they have not had the same follow-up or the maturity of the studies as the radical prostatectomies, especially robotically, and the radiation. So those are the two things that you can consider. We have, and by the way, here in the Valley, We have all the options available. And at DHR, we exist with the intention that a patient should only leave the valley to get their care by choice, not because we don't have it available here.
I like that. So we've definitely made strides, and there's a lot of options that are out there. So I'm so happy that we're having events like this, and it's great to see a room full of people that are going to get PSA testing today. So Dr. Phil, for the men that maybe did not come forward, what sort of advice do you have for them if they're maybe hesitant or a little fearful about getting that screening for prostate cancer?
Yeah, of course. Before I answer that, I kind of want to piggyback on Mrs. Garcia's statement. So there are a lot of patient education materials out there. The one that I like to use, it's made by the National Cancer Society, so NCCN. So if you Google, and Google's, a lot of patients use Dr. Google these days. So if you go and Google NCCN, just type the kind of cancer. So in this case, it's going to be prostate cancer, and there's a whole PDF just dedicated for patient learning. So it's a really good, useful tool. It has a list of questions that the patient should ask their doctor too. So it's a really insightful tool. And also kind of follow up on Dr. Ruiz's statement as well. So there are different ways to treat the prostate cancer. We can surgically remove it. We can use radiation, but also active surveillance and watchful waiting are also another two options. So active surveillance, it's a modality where we know you have prostate cancer. Just like Dr. Ruiz suggested, it's for localized prostate cancer with a low risk. To those individuals, active surveillance means that we know you have cancer. We're just gonna keep an eye on it, do biopsies every once or twice a year, get MRIs just for the prostate, depending on the provider. And then the goal of the active surveillance is to delay the side effects of the treatments without really missing the opportunity to cure it. So just want to put it out there. I counsel my patients, yes, you have cancer, but you have a low risk, so we don't have to treat it right now. We can just keep an eye on it. So that's always a good option, I believe, per guideline. And what was your question again?
What do we want to tell men that maybe are a little hesitant about getting the screening?
Yeah, so as everyone pointed out, prostate cancer is silent, right? Meaning majority of the patients don't really have any symptoms. So there are a lot of patients that tell me, hey doc, I don't have any symptoms. I know my PSA is high, but do I really have prostate cancer? Then I tell them, yes, it's good that you don't have symptoms, but depending, based on your PSA, your family history, I think you may have prostate cancer, and it's the most common cancer diagnosed in men, so that we should proceed with the next step, which typically is the MRI and then a biopsy.
Okay. So, Mayor, we heard about the different options. When you were faced with your diagnosis, how did you explore your treatment options? How did you make the decision to do what you did?
Well, obviously there was a lot of questions that we had, and I just looked into the options that was presented to us. But for me, it's different for everybody. I mean, these are options that you're not going to be required, as the doctors are mentioning, okay, you're going to do active surveillance, you're going to do radiation, or you're going to do surgery. It's actually up to you, yourself, to make that determination. And so I chose to have the surgery, not because it was required. That's just what myself, my wife, my family felt that we needed to do. Not everybody does that. I just felt strongly that removal of the prostate was the best thing for me. It could be different for you. Obviously, it depends on the stage too. There's some. Mine was early stage, so that's why I mentioned earlier. You tend to have a little bit more options, or at least some flexibility, I will say, in terms of what treatment option you're going to go through. If it's later stage, your options are limited. I think the doctors can expand on that. But mine was early stage. I just thought that the surgery was the best route, even though I had never had any surgery at all. That was the toughest thing for me. But I just felt that that's what I need to do to make sure that, I get cured from this prostate cancer.
Okay. Ms. Myra, what advice, now looking at it twice over, do you have for wives and families that may be just beginning this very difficult journey?
I would advise to stay vigilant for us with the recurrence. After a certain amount of time, you just tend to assume that it's gone, it's over, it's done, right? Even if your doctor doesn't regularly do the PSA, like for example, my husband is 10 years out from his prostatectomy, request it. It's part of the panel. It's not a big deal if you're drawing blood for everything else. Ask for the PSA. Stay vigilant and have the conversations. Have the conversations with your spouse, with your sons, with your friends. If you are talking about your father that's elderly, don't assume that because he's older that any of those tests are normal. Take action and ask the questions and to stay vigilant. It's a test that you need to do for life.
Stay vigilant and ask the questions. Okay, so Dr. Ruiz, today we're excited that we're going to have dozens of men that are going to be getting PSA tests courtesy of DHR Health. So as we start to close this out, how do you think that events like this, that were inspired by Mayor Garza, kind of help to spread that awareness in our Valley community?
Well, I think they're essential. This is a way to educate the community and hopefully break through all the taboos that we have in our own culture regarding getting tested and so on. So I think many more of these need to occur and just continue as a way of education of the community. That's the key, because if you are educated, if you know about this, if you have examples like the mayor here, which he has handled it amazingly well. So I commend the mayor on that. But that's the whole purpose. Yeah, more of these need to happen periodically on a regular schedule basis. And it may not need to be on the prostate cancer awareness month. It should be even more frequent than that.
Okay. Mayor, any last words of advice for the folks that are here with us today?
I'll just say that I think those of you that may not know how to get a hold of me, I'm here to continue providing
Everybody knows how to get a hold of you, Mayor.
any information as possible. But not only that, I see a lot of survivors that are here. I invited some survivors that are here. You know who you are. Thank you for being here. We should have had them wear colored shirts or something so that other men could distinguish who they are. But I want to thank them because I learned a lot from all the survivors. I see former Mayor Garcia here. We were just talking about it. He just got here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being with us.
I relied on him and so many others that had gone through this, and they were very open to share. And I learned a lot, from learned a lot from asking questions to doctors, but also from others. So stay vigilant is key. Those of you that are just maybe, the other thing I'll mention, and I think the doctors should probably expand on this, is there's sometimes that you'll find that your PSA is elevated, but you may not have cancer. And I think that's something that should be talked about. Because I have seen that out there, people that have gone through this process, but the main thing is stay vigilant, ask questions, and make sure that you're following up.
Okay, y'all want to expand on that part?
Sure. Well, there are some things that can falsely elevate a PSA. If you have a prostate infection, if you have any type of prostate manipulation, you have a colonoscopy and somebody does a blood test, a PSA, may very well be elevated. If you have what we call a cystoscopy, something we do routinely as evaluation for other things, that also can lead to an elevation of the PSA, and then it takes 3 to 4 weeks for the PSA to come back to what it was before, whatever the event that caused the false elevation. So again, it's a matter of realizing if there was any. Part of the other questions that we ask when somebody comes in with a PSA, well, were you having any burning of your fever, blood, and so on? And if you eliminate that, if you have a colonoscopy or anything else, you have a catheter placed in your bladder for whatever reason. If you have one of those, then you want to repeat the PSA again and again, about a month or so to make sure, and see, that would be the actual PSA that was present before whatever incited the false elevation.
Okay, well, that's good to know in case anybody gets one with an elevated PSA right today. That's important. Thank you all so much for being here today and for participating in such an important and in some cases very deeply personal conversation to our incredible panelists, Mayor Garza, Dr. Kim, Mrs. Garcia, and Dr. Ruiz. Thank you so much for your expertise. I think that your stories and your insights have not just given us knowledge today, but definitely some inspiration. So we can have a round of applause for our panel. And to everyone that's here today, I hope that you take this as more than just a discussion. I hope it's a call to action today. So if you or maybe a loved one is due for a screening, go get a screening. If it's your birthday, go get a physical like Mayor Garza does. Just talk to your doctor and start that conversation. I think today we're already on the road to raising awareness, which is what we wanted to do today, and breaking the silence, and then hopefully saving some lives. So thank you again so much for being part of this conversation. Stay informed, stay proactive, and most importantly, stay healthy. We thank you all so much for being with us this morning.